Part 33. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Seong-Lang Go. Chapter 321. When the Queen contacted the three major powers and planned to jointly snipe Li Enping, she never thought that she could easily get rid of the other party. Even if the Star Alliance was Li Enping's mortal enemy, the Queen had to admit that Li Enping's own strength had reached a point that was unprecedented and unparalleled. In particular, his body also had super regenerative power, which was no longer something that any conventional means could deal with. So after gathering so many fifth-level powers and enough power to destroy cities and countries, the Star Alliance's plan was never a simple assassination. Instead, it was to clean up all the forces belonging to Li Enping in Tianjing from the bottom up, and finally encircle and suppress Li Enping, slowly grinding the opponent to death. And relying on the cooperation of many abilities, it left no hope for Li Enping to survive. This was a strategy to avoid direct combat with Li Enping, giving up the opponent's strongest melee ability. If you want to kill all the forces that can help Li Enping and interfere with the battlefield while Li Enping is still in Tianjing, you need someone to hold Li Enping back and prevent him from supporting you temporarily. The team of Yulia, Shang Jinhai, and Barnes is responsible for holding Li Enping back. Of course, it would be even better if they can kill him while holding him back. When Barnes activated his ability, Li Enping only felt a strong repulsive force coming from the air around him, and then in a flash, he had disappeared in front of Shang Jinhai and the other two. Yulia exhaled, and her body suddenly softened to the ground. Successful. Yes, Barnes nodded and said, my alien exile can last for 5 minutes, at least in the next 5 minutes. This monster can't hurt us. Yulia said with luck, maybe he will have turned into a pile of rotten meat when he comes back. Seeing that the two were too relaxed, Shang Jinhai on the side reminded them, okay. Get ready quickly. I will stop him when he comes out. Yulia, you and Barnes will cooperate again to prepare for the next exile. Shang Jinhai looked at the place where Li Enping disappeared, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Since he has been hit, he must not be given any breathing space. Alien exile is the ability of this woman named Barnes. Its activation condition is blood and body contact, but because of the spirit gem, Barnes temporarily obtained the 5th level ability of the Queen of Heaven, which reduced his activation conditions and did not require physical contact. As long as Barnes's blood touches the other person's body and is within a range of 500 meters, it will be fine. The creatures or objects exiled from the other world will be randomly teleported to any corner of the multiverse and then come back after 5 minutes. But the universe is too big. Most of the space is empty, and 90% of the remaining places are not suitable for human survival. It can be said that most humans, even those with special abilities, have a high mortality rate after being hit by the streak. But Li Enping, the Star Alliance is not sure. Their goal is to let Shang Jinhai and the other two cooperate to keep Li Enping exiled from the other world. It would be best if he died. If he didn't die, when everyone else was free, they could implement the next plan to completely kill Li Enping. When the three began to prepare for the next exile, Li Enping in a certain place in the multiverse opened his eyes. The temperature of the body was dropping sharply. There were all kinds of unknown radiations around him that were eroding his flesh, and he could no longer breathe any air from his mouth and nose. This is a forbidden place for life. In the void of the universe. So, Li Enping's body began to adapt to this new environment. First of all, a thin film grew out of Li Enping's eye sockets to protect his eyeballs from damage. Then the holes of the nose, mouth, and ears closed instantly, and the respiratory system started the internal circulation mode. Then the muscles on the skeleton began to emit heat, and the energy stored in the body was directly converted into heat energy to fight against the cold in the void of the universe. The void force field began to correct Li Enping's position, allowing him to freely control his body shape without gravity and the earth. The Hell Map was originally a transformation system that allowed life to fight in all environments. After Li Anping completed the transformation of the Hell map, his body was able to adapt to 99% of the environment in the universe. Cosmic environment, Li Anping looked around. Even if he exhausted his eyesight, it was difficult to see the existence of the planet. He could only see bright stars in the far distance. While observing these stars in the universe, Li Anping compared them with the memories in his mind, but did not find any similarities. This place no longer belongs to any galaxy known to humans. That woman, is she using the ability of space transmission? In the vacuum of the universe, Li Anping still did not see the slightest panic on his face, but calmly thought about the other party's ability. But simple space teleportation can't teleport me to such an unknown galaxy. Or is this a place that the Star Alliance discovered by accident? Is it an illusion, or is this really space? Thinking of this, Li Anping raised his right hand and suddenly punched in front of him. There was no sound, no air, and no shock wave. Li Anping's punch on the earth was enough to turn the world upside down, but here, not even a ripple was produced. Li Anping frowned for the first time. When Li Anping was temporarily controlled by the alien exile, a fight also started in Tianjing City. Pluto slowly walked on the street, and as he walked, one after another, the Templar Knights came out of his body. 4,454 Templar Knights, like a big grinding wheel of flesh and blood, turned countless policemen, civilians, and innocent people with abilities into pieces of flesh and blood. Every Templar Knight is a warrior who grew up in the sea of fire and swords. They have been wandering on the edge of life and death for many years, and regard killing as an instinct like eating and drinking. The power armor on them can make them extremely powerful. They can walk fast, and they have an indestructible chainsaw sword. The fighting will of fanatics and their different superpowers make it easy for them to face ordinary people like cutting melons and vegetables. But they are not just facing ordinary people. Get out of here. The violent golden energy rushed up into the sky, and along with the roar of Jingguang, the terrible energy cannon exploded directly in the crowd, and more than 20 Templar Knights were directly killed by this blow. Jingguang wanted to attack again, but a holy light had already passed through the crowd. It directly tore a hole in his waist. Lord, forgive his sins, this pagan has no idea who he is facing. A knight who was dressed in a higher level than the knights around him came out, and the scarlet cloak floated behind him like a sea of blood. And the light just now was shot from his fingertips. The deputy leader of the Knights Templar, the Light of God Alexander. Level 5 ability user, Yan Bei's pupils shrank slightly on the other side. The other party did not hide his energy at all. The momentum of the 5th energy level was as obvious as the light in the dark. Seeing that Jingguang was seriously injured by the other party, he stretched out his palm and the collapse ability was about to be activated. But just when he raised his hand, a rapier stabbed directly at his palm like a black poisonous snake. Yan Bei was forced to change the direction of the ability and directly apply the collapse to the location of the rapier. But the rapier seemed to have known it in advance. The sword turned directly, bypassing the collapse force field, and directly took a large piece of flesh and blood from Yan Bei's hand. Next, the sword holder did not give up. The rapier was like a poisonous snake that could not be shaken off. It kept moving around and tore open one cut after another on Yan Bei's body. In a short time, Yan Bei's feet were already bleeding. Facing Yan Bei's collapse attack, he easily dodged it with a hair's breadth. While attacking, he had time to command the nearby knights. After cleaning up this place, surround the building that the Star Alliance said, and no one can be allowed in. The surrounding knights shouted, yes. Another level 5 ability user. Yan Bei's eyes flashed with a trace of solemnity. He also took this opportunity to glance around, but saw that the people on the street had turned into corpses, and several knights were finishing off one by one. The other dragon bird guards who had come with them had also been chopped down by dozens of knights. When Yan Bei saw a knight chop off the head of a dragon bird guard and show off to his companions around him, A hint of a grim smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Ah! Dozens of collapse force fields appeared around Yanbei at the same time, and hundreds of knights were turned into nothingness in an instant. But the level 5 ability user who attacked Yanbei with a sword seemed to be able to predict Yanbei's attack in advance, and he moved lightly and perfectly avoided all of Yanbei's attacks. Looking at the hundreds of knights who disappeared around him, the man with the sword licked the blood on the sword, smiled and ordered, "You go first, I want to drain his blood myself bit by bit." The man who attacked Yanbei with a rapier was another deputy leader of the Knights Templar, the Eye of God, Walford. In front of Momo, a map of Tianjing City appeared on the display screen. The green part on it represents the part where the power system is intact, and the red part represents the part where the power grid is completely paralyzed. On the entire map, the red part is spreading to the entire Tianjing at a speed visible to the naked eye. If this continues, it will take less than 5 minutes for the entire Tianjing to be paralyzed. And it's not just the city power grid that has been attacked. Behind Momo, Lu Sheng pushed open the door and walked in. He shouted, "What's going on, Momo? Why is the internet disconnected in a large area? And why can't our communication system be used?" "I'm still checking," Momo said without turning his head. On the screen in front of him, the data was constantly refreshing like a waterfall. On his hands, 10 fingers extended, a total of 10 thought lines connected to the supercomputer, which meant that he was operating the computer with all his strength. An unknown strong magnetic field enveloped the entire Tianjing, and all communication equipment has lost its function. Yajiao frowned and said, "Can you repair it?" "I don't know." At this moment, a loud bang was heard, and the ground under the feet of the two people made a series of terrible tremors, as if there was an earthquake. Yajiao lay on the ground and frowned. What happened again? At the gate of the Daxia Longke underground base, Tianho, Songbang, and Zhurong stood side by side. A huge palm made entirely of stone and soil was slowly retreating from the gate of the base. This is the giant hand created by the white dwarf with his power. As for his real body, no one knows where it is hiding deep underground in Tianjin. Looking at the base gate that was punched open by the white dwarf, Songbang sneered, "I didn't expect that I would come back like this." Zhurong shrugged, "Let's go, let's meet old friends." The Queen of Heaven didn't say a word, but just followed the footsteps of the two, as if walking in her own garden, and walked towards the depths of the base. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 322. The auditorium of the palace was now full of people. Among them are the heads of the 9 royal families, powerful figures in the country, and representatives from various companies and groups. In addition to these domestic ones, there are also many ambassadors from foreign countries. All of them were invited to attend Li Anping's enthronement ceremony to observe the ceremony. But at this time, the loud noise and the sound of a suspected explosion coming from outside the auditorium made them suspicious. Emma, who was sitting in the front row, couldn't sit still. She called Zhou Mai, who was responsible for the security of the auditorium. "What's going on? What's the noise outside?" "I don't know." Zhou Mei's eyes were a little nervous. "Our communicator suddenly stopped working. I've sent people to see what's going on, but no one has come back yet." Emma then realized that the communication system was not working. He looked at his mobile phone and found that it was indeed the case. She stood up suddenly. "No, I have to go take a look." Zhou Mai stopped him and whispered, "Sir, you'd better stay here. Once you leave, I'm afraid it will cause everyone uneasiness." When Emma heard this, she subconsciously looked at the guests around her, and found that everyone was looking at her, who suddenly stood up with doubts in their eyes. Zhou Mei advised again, "Don't worry, sir, His Majesty is here. And even if there is a problem with the communication system, if anything happens, the teleportation team will come and notify us." The teleportation troops Zhou Mei mentioned were the troops Xiaoligang met on the street last time. They are stationed at the center of Tianjing's defense array and can teleport themselves to any corner of Tianjing at any time through the phase matrix. Just when the two were halfway talking, an old man's voice suddenly came from behind. What? Did something happen? The two of them turned around and saw that Fang Yahuang had arrived behind them at some point. He was looking at them both with a smile. Zhou Mai said calmly, "It's nothing, just some minor problems. Your Majesty will be here in a moment, Mr. Fang, you'd better take your seat as soon as possible." Fang Yahuang smiled and shook his head. "Well, I usually sit too much in Baiyu, so I just want to stand more. Let's talk. If you need help with anything, please come to me at any time." Zhou Mai smiled. He and Emma watched Fang Yahuang leave. Emma said coldly, "Old fox." "Yes, so sir, as the only fifth-level person here, you'd better not leave." When Emma was about to nod, her eyes suddenly froze, as if she was listening to some voice. The next moment she frowned and said to Ziuyi, "I'm sorry. I have to leave for a while." Before Zhou Mei could stop him, he saw Emma suddenly take a step back, and her entire body fell into a dark portal and disappeared in an instant. Emma's disappearance also caused a commotion in the auditorium. Originally, mobile phones, communicators and other things could not contact the outside world, which already made everyone feel that something was wrong. Now even Daxia's 5th-level ability user Emma has disappeared, which makes everyone realize that something is wrong. But Emma was no longer in the mood to care about this. When she stepped out of the portal, she had arrived 100 meters underground in the center of Tianjing City. This is the center of the entire Tianjing City, and it was also the control center when the defense array was originally deployed. So Emma is very familiar with the location and coordinates here. Only then can you open the portal at will and come over. She had come here with the doctor quite a lot. In the silver-white room, it is still a familiar environment. It just seemed like there were some new instruments that Emma couldn't understand. And the doctor was still standing in front of a computer, typing on the keyboard quickly, just like she had seen every time she came here. She hadn't seen the scene for a long time since the construction of the defense array was completed. After all, since then, the doctor no longer cared about the defense array, but immersed himself in the research of the 8th Research Institute. Looking at the doctor's back, Emma shouted, "Why did you ask me to come here?" The doctor said calmly, "Tianjing was attacked, and more than 10 level 5 ability users were involved." Li Qian didn't believe it. "What? How is it possible? Are you kidding me? If this is the case, Your Majesty, Li Anping is missing. He seems to have been teleported away by the other party using unknown means." "How is that possible?" Li Qian still didn't believe it. The doctor ignored her and just said in a calm tone, "In order to prevent the furious Li Anping from tearing these intruders to pieces together with me when he comes back, I think we should work hard to reduce Tianjing's losses." "Are you serious?" Seeing that the doctor didn't seem to be joking at all, he asked doubtfully, "Then just activate the defense array, teleport our people together, separate and surround the other party. And then transmit the sound, give it to them and tell them what's going on." "I can't do it," the doctor sighed, "not to mention teleporting and changing the attributes of space, just passing a sentence into your ears is already my limit. The only remaining function of the phase matrix now is monitoring." "One item." "What's going on?" Li Qian shouted. The doctor simply explained, "It's not clear yet. I just roughly checked that the gravitational coefficient of the entire Tianjing area has been modified by someone. This person made the change in gravity interfere with the vibrating strings in all dimensions, causing me to the phase matrix loses its ability to operate in space." "What?" Emma looked at the doctor stupidly, "Can you speak human language? And why can my portal still be used?" The doctor sighed, "Because our abilities seem to have similar effects, but the principles are different. The phase matrix is to change the real four-dimensional world by influencing the high-dimensional space-time above 4 dimensions. And your portal does not require this kind of high-dimensional operation, but just connects two unconnected space slices in our world. The doctor glanced at Emma, and saw that the other party looked like listening to a book of heaven, and sighed deeply again. When I built the defense array a year ago, I suggested that you apply for the Department of Physics of Tianjin University. If you do as I say, your current application of your own abilities can at least double your combat effectiveness. Okay, Emma said impatiently, now the situation is so critical, don't say these things. In short, my ability is useful, your ability is useless, now you have to rely on me. The doctor nodded helplessly and pointed to the image in front of him, which was the only monitoring ability left by the phase matrix. 3 level 5 users are attacking the base of Daxia. 2 more level 5 users are fighting Jingguang and Yanbei on 7th Avenue. I'm afraid they won't be able to hold on for long. More than 4,000 armed personnel have just ended the massacre on the street and surrounded a building. There are 3 level 5 users on the building. They are the ones who just teleported Li Anping away. But they are still staying where they are. Their purpose is not clear for the time being. There are 3 more level 5 users rushing towards the airport. I guess their purpose is to snipe Bai Zheng. There is another level 5 user destroying the power grid. It won't be long before the entire Tianjin will be paralyzed except for places with backup power supplies. As for the military. As the doctor spoke, he called up several blurry pictures, from which we can see that in the distance of the city, there are many destroyed armored and semi-mechanized troops. Although we can't contact the outside world for the time being, there are at least 3 level 5 ability users who are slaughtering all the troops that have come. For the time being, we don't need to think about support. We just hope that the army can use human lives to hold back these 3 ability users. At this point, the doctor frowned, and the phase matrix directly cut the screen to the sky above the palace. Countless figures fell from the sky. They all wore masks and black combat uniforms. They fell from the sky to the palace without any cover, even without parachutes. There were tens of thousands of people. The doctor and Emma didn't think they would come to commit mass suicide. Emma took a deep breath. She didn't expect the situation to be so bad. She looked at the doctor seriously and asked, "What do you want me to do?" "You are the only one who can quickly transmit messages in Tianjin City," the doctor said at a very fast speed. "First, I want you to go to this location. SpecialAbilities is there. I want you to explain the situation to him and then take him to support the base of Daxia. Then give this thing to Momo," as he said. The doctor handed an unknown device the size of a palm to Emma's hand. "Someone is manipulating a magnetic field covering the entire Tianjin, causing all our communication equipment to lose contact. You give this thing to Momo, which should help him temporarily restore communication." Emma nodded and put the thing in her arms. "While you are doing this, I will readjust and rebuild the entire defense array. I can probably buy 10 minutes before the opponent changes the gravity coefficient next time, and then you need to help me defend here during this time." Defend the control center. Emma was suddenly shocked. Is someone going to attack here? Yes, the distortion source that changes the gravity coefficient is approaching here, but he should not know the specific entrance and location. Counting the time for searching, it is enough for you to go back and forth. Seeing Emma nodded, the doctor continued, "Well, 10 minutes after the remake is completed, I will try my best to reduce the losses in Tianjin and eliminate the opponent through the defense array. The living force of the party. And you have to protect me during this time." Emma nodded heavily. "Don't worry, leave it to me." The doctor took a deep look and said slowly, "Let me remind you first, judging from the means they have shown now, I am afraid that they have gathered the highest combat power of several countries. We are at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. The only thing we can do is to delay time until Li Anping comes back, and before that, you may face more than one level 5 ability user. If you can't bear it by then, use that. Not hearing the imagined answer, the doctor turned his head and found that Emma had disappeared. What an impatient person. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, SpecialAbilities. Chapter 323. In the sky, a silver passenger plane was slowly descending and flying towards the location of Tianjin Airport. In the huge cabin, only Bai Xing was sitting on a chair with his eyes closed. He looked like he was half asleep, but every breath seemed to drive the airflow in the cabin. On the knees of Bai Xing's legs, there was a long silver-white sword. The sword body was streamlined as a whole, and the surface was extremely smooth, like a mirror, and it could even clearly reflect the surrounding objects. The blade was cut by Emma's spatial power, and it was even sharper. Ordinary people would feel like being pricked by a needle just by looking at it. This sword was designed by Li Anping, finalized by Emma, and finally modified by Bai Xing. Bai Xing named it Chuanqi. As the name suggests, Bai Xing believed that this sword was famous enough to be passed down to the world and used as a national treasure. Although Bai Xing will use the remaining adamantium alloy to make another ten-fist sword, he thinks that the legend has cost him too much effort, and he is afraid that he will never be able to make a ten-fist sword that surpasses the legend. And he came from Xindanjiang to attend the coronation ceremony this time, just to hand over the legend to Li Anping at the ceremony. At this moment, the whole plane suddenly shook violently. Bai Xing opened his eyes suddenly, and 2 1-foot-long blue lights burst out from his eyes. The stewardess in front of the cabin shouted, "Sir, don't be nervous, nothing is wrong, it's just air turbulence." But Bai Xing ignored her and stood up directly. Then he tied the legend behind him, and then he stretched out his hand. The original ten-fist sword on the side had been sucked into his hand. The stewardess saw Bai Xing standing up and hurriedly dissuaded him, "Sir, please sit down immediately, we are landing, it's very dangerous." Bai Xing did not speak, but held the ten-fist sword in his hand and looked at the top of the plane. I only heard a constant squeaking sound coming from all around, and I don't know when it started. Countless blood-colored bats slowly wrapped up the entire plane and were constantly gnawing at the entire plane. A terrible explosion sounded from the engines on both sides of the plane, and the entire plane had already fallen from the sky with thick smoke. Then I saw a flash of knife light, and a big hole had been cut on the top of the plane. Bai Xing's body jumped and had already left the plane and came to the air. Ha 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 ha. Are you Bai Xing? I saw countless blood-colored bats directly break away from the surface of the plane and fly around Bai Xing. At the same time, a man's voice kept coming from the bat group. As Bai Xing fell, the ten-fist sword in his hand stabbed out like lightning, and the violent sword energy was like a white dragon, directly tearing the air hundreds of meters around him, and the destructive power like thunder directly smashed a large area of blood bats into pieces. It was the Great Thunder Sound sword technique. A furious cry came from the blood bats, "Asshole! I'm going to kill you!" All the blood bats were burning. With bursts of blood-colored flames on their bodies, they rushed towards Bai Xing in midair in groups. Seeing the blood flames all over the sky, Bai Xing snorted coldly, and the ten-fist sword shook lightly, slowly reaching the center of the blood flames. With this sword pointing out, a cold breath seemed to fall from the sky and rolled in all directions. Bai Xing pointed out the Ice Soul Xianming sword. The temperature dropped at a terrifying speed, and snowflakes began to float in most of the sky. The terrible coldness swallowed the blood bats with the momentum of swallowing mountains and rivers. The bats that rushed over with burning blood flames were covered with a layer of frost on their bodies, and then their movements became slower and slower, and even the blood flames on their bodies gradually extinguished. In just 2 or 3 seconds, they were frozen into a pile of ice chips and fell to the ground. Seeing the cold air spreading over a larger area, the remaining bats quickly retreated, and the panicked voice of the blood demon rang out, "Samael, what are you waiting for? My blood energy is about to run out." It turned out that all of the blood demon's moves required blood as the material, but he had been resurrected for a short time. Even if he killed and injured thousands of civilians on the way to the airport, the blood he gathered was still far from enough to be consumed in the battle of the level 5 strongmen. And along with the blood demon's cry, a disdainful sneer came from the air. I saw a black shadow flashing more than a dozen times in a row, appearing behind Bai Zing, and stabbed the dagger in his hand towards Bai Zing. Teleport. This thought flashed through Bai Zing's mind, and the Ice Soul Xianming sword continued to move, still sweeping towards the blood demon with today's cold air, and his left hand brought up a series of sparks, turning into the fire god's advice palm and blasting it behind him. The blood demon let out a miserable cry, and had already collected all the blood bats and flew towards the ground. Samael can teleport 10 times in a second, making him one of the toughest opponents among the level 5 ability users. The dagger in his hand flew up and down, and he kept flashing around Bai Zing and attacking him. Although Bai Zing was proficient in all the secret martial arts from ancient times to the present, and his combat experience and physical fitness far exceeded Samael, he was unable to defeat Samael, who teleported continuously. After a series of rapid clashes between daggers, long swords, and palms, Bai Zing simply used the Ice Soul Mysterious Sword again, infusing the space around him with infinite cold air, making it difficult for Samael to get close to him for a while. Samael sneered and was no longer in a hurry to attack. Instead, he flashed several times and fell to the ground. It turned out that the three of them had been fighting for a long time and were falling all the way. At this time, they were less than 100 meters away from the ground. Seeing that Bai Zing was about to fall to the ground and turn into a pool of meat, a whirlwind suddenly blew under his feet, slowing down his falling speed and landing diagonally towards a forest below the ground. He performed the secret martial arts he created with Li Enping, the Qigong technique. But as soon as Bai Zing landed, a fist as big as a sand bowl hit his chest. The violent power poured out with this fist, and the hurricane blew on Bai Zing's face, even making him feel suffocated. With a bang, Bai Zing hit the fist with a big dragon palm at the same time, but the palm power that was enough to split mountains and rocks was directly blasted away when it touched the opponent's fist like spring snow. The violent force directly knocked Bai Zing hundreds of meters away, and he didn't know how many trees he had broken along the way. When Bai Zing stopped, he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He felt his internal organs churning, and his left hand, which had just caught the opponent's punch, also felt a sharp pain. His hand bones were broken. Looking at the man who slowly walked over after throwing a punch, Bai Zing said coldly, "Is it you?" I saw a trace of a grim smile on Kron's zombie-like face. His right hand, which had just punched, had disappeared completely, but strangely, as various oil particles on the ground gathered at his broken arm, his palm was slowly recovering. "Last time, my body was not strong enough to use my own strength completely," Kron smiled at Bai Zing, "but this time, my body is not afraid of being injured. Are you ready? Bear the weight of the earth." As Kron spoke, Samael and the blood demon also appeared behind Bai Zing, staring at each other covetously. Bai Zing frowned. "Your Majesty hasn't appeared yet, so, is there something wrong with Tianjing?" He touched the legend behind him and thought, "Anyway, get rid of these three guys first and hand over the legend to your Majesty." When the fierce battles were raging in Tianjing and the people of Daxialonke were at a disadvantage, Li Enping still stood in the void and thought quietly. After several tests before, this is indeed a cosmic environment. The connection with the incarnation of mind energy has been completely cut off. Currently, I can't contact Tianjing. With the energy reserves in my body, if I only maintain the most basic life, I can survive in the void for about 3,400 years. Just when Li Enping was halfway through thinking, suddenly, there was a wave of pressure in the void again. Li Anping frowned. Here it comes again. Are you going to teleport me to another place, or teleport me back? Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 324. In the building, Shang Jinhai, Yulia, and Barna stood together more than 200 meters away from where Li Anping disappeared. Sweat dripped from their chins. Except for Shang Jinhai, no matter whether it was Yulia still, Barnes's eyes were full of nervousness. The two of them stared at the place where Li Anping disappeared, not even daring to blink. Shang Jinhai stared at the watch on his wrist. On it was a countdown starting from 300 seconds, which represented the time for Li Anping's return. The countdown above only has the last 10 seconds left. 10 seconds left, Shang Jinhai read out. Beside him, Yulia and Barnes couldn't help but become nervous after hearing this. 5 seconds left. Yulia took a deep breath, and the fear and tension in her body made her hands tremble. After killing this monster, I must take a year off. There are still 3 seconds. Shang Jinhai is not as nervous as Yulia and the others, because he is confident that no matter how strong Li Anping is, even if he can't kill Li Anping in this action, Li Anping will never hurt him. Opportunity comes. 2 seconds. Yulia and Barnes couldn't help but hold their breath. For them, this would be a life or death moment. 1 second. The next moment, Li Anping's blurry figure appeared in its original position again, but at the same moment he appeared, the whole world seemed to have stopped again. The clouds in the sky stopped changing, and the sun's rays stopped moving. Both Yulia and Barnes stood motionless like puppets. Shang Jinhai blinked and found that a milky white shockwave had stopped in front of his eyes. It was a shockwave composed entirely of air, struck out by Li Anping with one palm. When Shang Jinhai looked at Li Anping's position, he found that he was looking in the direction of the three of them, and struck a palm towards them. The white shockwave before was the effect of Li Anping's palm. Shang Jinhai smiled. Unfortunately, you can never kill me. Then he walked to Yulia and Barnes, holding his hands on the left and right. He grabbed the two people's shoulders respectively. Ah! The two screamed and transformed from static puppets into living beings again. Yulia looked at the shockwave so close and subconsciously stepped back, but bumped into Shang Jinhai. And Barnes looked steadily at the shockwave that seemed to be frozen in mid-air, and Li Anping who stood motionless, and murmured, "The inviolable boundary is really a godlike power." Shang Jinhai said lightly, "The past can never be changed now. And the past can never catch up with the future. This is the truth of the entire universe. Okay, don't think too much, our time is limited, let's prepare for the second exile to another world." Yulia and Barnes nodded, and Shang Jinhai grabbed their shoulders and moved slowly under Yulia's guidance. Yulia, on the other hand, grabbed the sniper rifle and adjusted her position. While adjusting her position to find the shooting angle, she couldn't help but look at the situation around her. Ever since Shang Jinhai activated his ability, the tension seemed to be gone from her and Barnes' faces. Because they knew that at least during the time when Shang Jinhai activated his abilities, it is impossible for Li Anping to hurt them. After adjusting the position, Yulia placed the sniper rifle on the ground again, pointed the scope at the still Li Anping, and then she gently pulled the trigger. The sure-hit gun was launched, and the bullet came out of the barrel in an instant. But just as it came out of the barrel, it immediately stopped and froze at the muzzle of the gun. Yulia breathed out, "Okay." Shang Jinhai nodded, "Okay, let's go." When Li Anping returned to Tianjing, his eyes immediately looked at the location of Shang Jinhai and the others. Before the three people's brains could react, he had already struck the direction of the three of them with a palm from the air. The white shockwave directly spanned a distance of hundreds of meters, not only squeezing and crushing everything passing by, but also directly breaking the walls and glass of the building and shooting towards the street. But the same thing happened as before. Just when the shockwave was about to hit Shang Jinhai, the three of them disappeared at the same time. To make matters worse, another identical bullet hit Li Anping directly between the eyebrows, and the donated blood poured into the bullet was directly sprinkled on Li Anping's eyebrows. But this time, Li Anping didn't hesitate at all. The mental energy on his body shot in all directions again. While looking for the location where the three people had moved, a black figure quietly appeared behind him. But before he could make the next move, Li Anping's entire body had disappeared again, leaving only the black incarnation of his mind energy standing there, motionless like a statue covered in pitch black. After feeling a stinging pain in his body, Li Anping's eyes suddenly lit up. He was lucky this time and was not transported into the void of the universe. He seemed to have arrived on a certain planet. But it doesn't matter. The time he just went back may only be a few seconds, but it is enough for Li Anping. Although the incarnation of mind energy was summoned to Tianjing, I still can't control it after leaving. Is it because the distance is too far? Li Anping's brain was running at high speed, and clues flashed through his mind quickly. Although it's a bit unbelievable, the basic situation has been clarified. This teleportation ability is the same. It will send me back in about 300 seconds. Now it seems that I was not teleported directly to the black hole. I should be teleported immediately to places like the inside of stars. Thinking of this, Li Anping sneered, and a terrifying power slowly gathered in his right hand. Next time I go back, it will almost be over. At this moment, a man's voice suddenly sounded behind Li Anping. Famous travel disaster, private solution. Sorry, it seems to be a tourist accident. Do you want me to solve it? Li Anping turned around and saw that the person speaking was a man with silver hair and narrowed eyes. Isn't it any known language, indigenous to an alien planet? Only then did Li Anping become concerned about his surroundings. The position he was currently standing on seemed to be a rocky highland, and besides him, there were 6 creatures that looked similar to humans standing on this highland. These 6 humanoid creatures seemed to be divided into 2 groups standing opposite each other. Because they looked almost the same as humans, Li Anping tentatively called them humans. One of the 2 groups consisted of 2 men and 1 woman, and the other group consisted of 3 men. The silver-haired man who spoke belonged to the group of 3 men. In addition to him, there was a black man with many braids and a tall man wearing glasses. Their costumes are all a bit weird. Li Anping has never seen anything similar in either the eastern or western continent. They all wear black or white robes and wear something similar to straw sandals on their feet. The men also carry long robes on their hands or waists. The overall style of the knife is somewhat similar to a combination of Daxia, Baiyu, and Dongyang. After the silver-haired man finished speaking, a man with glasses who seemed to be the leader among the 3 men also spoke. He looked at Li Anping and smiled and said, "A real man, it's a clean sweep, it's a clear one, and it's a difference between the naked eye and the naked eye. It doesn't matter, whether there is 1 dust to be removed or 2, there is no difference visible to the naked eye." Li Anping frowned. The time was too short and the information was too little. He couldn't understand what the other party was saying at all. In fact, he was not interested in what the other party was saying. Judging from the other party's clothes and the weapons in his hands, the level of development of this planet does not seem to be very high, and the other party may not be able to understand the existence of the universe and the planet. As long as he waits in place for 5 minutes before going to deal with Shang Jinhai and the others, he may never come to this planet again. So he has no interest in communicating with the other party at all. So he simply sat there, planning to wait quietly for the 300 seconds to pass. But the other party obviously didn't think so. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 325. Li Anping sat aside and saw the man wearing glasses seemed to be saying something to the 3 people opposite him. Although he couldn't quite understand what they were saying, it seemed that among the 3 men, 1 man and 1 woman, the red-haired man and the orange-haired man wanted to protect the woman behind them. The woman was wearing a red collar around her neck and her clothes were somewhat similar to a white prison uniform. After a few words from both sides, they seemed to have broken down. The red-haired man raised the long knife in his hand, as if planning to attack. At this moment, Li Anping let out a sigh, because the knife in the red-haired man's hand was already broken, but when he raised the broken knife, the fragments of the broken knife floated on the ground around him. He attacked the man with glasses. Do the natives of this planet also have superpowers? There was a hint of interest in Li Anping's eyes, but the next battle ended quickly, because the strength of the man with glasses was far beyond that of the red-haired man and the orange-haired man. He just moved at high speed with the knife, and then slashed at the opponent. And beat the two opponents until they had no resistance. The speed and strength have both exceeded 15, and in terms of physical fitness alone, it has reached the 5th level of combat power. Seeing the red-haired man and the orange-haired man being easily chopped down to the ground, the man with glasses turned around again and set his sights on Li Anping. He looked at Li Anping and smiled and said, "Step on the foot and pay the ant, kill the ant, kill the ant, and kill the ant." It is difficult to master the power of stepping over ants without killing them. Finished. A step had already appeared behind Li Anping, and then the samurai sword in his hand had already slashed hard towards the opponent's back. This knife is so fast. It was like lightning piercing the sky. Not only could everyone present not be able to see it, but the rest of the people present could not even feel whether or when the other party had used the sword. But there was a choking sound, and the katana slashed directly on Li Anping's back, but it stayed within an inch of the surface and could not be slashed no matter what. At the same time, huge force reverberated and exploded directly under their feet. Smoke, dust, and debris on the ground rose into the sky, leaving a huge ravine along the location where the katana slashed. The bespectacled man looked at the unharmed Li Anping in surprise, smiled and said, "A white face is a travel disaster. Funny travel mishap." Li Anping frowned, looked at him and said, "Are you looking for death?" It's a pity that the other party couldn't understand what he said, and he was not interested in listening to what he regarded as an ant. He just retracted his katana and pointed to where Li Anping was. The 90 black coffin of the broken path. The 90 black coffins of breaking the way. Along with the other party's words, layers of black energy emerged in the space around Li Anping, like a mountain of knives, cutting across Li Anping's body. But in the face of this attack, which is enough to cut through steel and even severely damage level 5 ability users, Li Anping, who was sitting there, remained motionless, not even blinking. As expected, the black energy did not cause any harm to him. He did not even break through his atmospheric armor, but only left a series of traces on the surface of the armor. Ripples. Then, under the surprised expression of the bespectacled man, Li Anping slowly stood up. Black thoughts soared into the sky, as powerful as a demon, just like the sun in the sky, causing people within 100 miles of the defense to feel a palpitation in their hearts. Do you just want to die so much? Although the man with glasses couldn't understand what the other party meant, he could feel the murderous aura coming towards him like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He couldn't imagine how many creatures the other party had killed to have such a strong murderous aura on his body. But with many years of combat experience, he still reacted immediately and retreated quickly. But the only thing he could do was to take 3 steps back. 3 steps later, a huge fist fell from the sky, covering his entire sight as if the sky had collapsed. Before a suffocating force could arrive, it had already rubbed against the bespectacled man's face through the air. His glasses were first shattered into pieces, and all his hair was blown back by the squeezing air. How is that possible? Facing this punch, the man with glasses wanted to dodge, get out of the way, or block it with his samurai sword. But he couldn't do any of it. The opponent's speed had far exceeded his known limit. If he wasn't strong enough, he wouldn't even be able to sense such speed. There was a loud bang. Li Enping's fist hit the bespectacled man's forehead directly. With a soft thud, the other man's head exploded. However, the red and white liquid had not even exploded before it was blown away by the violent atmosphere, completely disappear. After the punch, a terrifying shockwave blew directly from the man's back and plowed along the ground, leaving a huge ravine several kilometers long with loud noises one after another. The remaining 5 people around him all looked at Li Enping with open mouths and disbelief on their faces, until the headless body of the man with glasses slowly fell to the ground. Ah! With a roar, the black man with the glasses man was the first to react and wanted to launch an offensive towards Li Enping. It's so noisy. But just as he made a move to draw his sword, Li Enping rushed forward, then grabbed his neck and lifted him up like a chicken. However, the black man was not giving up, and waved the samurai sword in his hand as if he wanted to launch something, but Li Enping snorted and broke his neck. There was a click from his neck, and the black man's limbs trembled, his clenched hand slowly loosened, and the samurai sword fell to the ground. Li Enping threw the other's body on the ground carelessly, just like he had killed a bug. He glanced at the other side, and the silver-haired man who spoke first seemed to have disappeared among the 3 people on the other side. On the other side, the red-haired and orange-haired men, as well as the women they protected, all looked at Li Enping with fear on their faces, with obvious fear in their eyes. When Li Enping thought he was done, 2 more women suddenly appeared beside him, one on the left and one on the right, and held him with knives respectively. Then more and more natives surrounded him. Listening to what they were saying, Li Enping said directly, "I don't understand what you are saying. If you don't want to die, get out of here." Although the other party didn't understand, they seemed to understand his threat. A woman with braids pointed a knife at him, pushed him directly, and said a few words that Li Enping didn't understand, as if threatening him to go with them. Faced with the threat from the other party, Li Enping sneered and punched the woman in the stomach again, punching her in 2. A fight started instantly with this punch. 3 minutes later, Li Enping was still sitting in the original position. But at this time, there were hundreds of corpses under his butt. They were either blown up in the head, or their bodies were crushed, their limbs were broken, and there were many broken swords scattered on the ground. This seemed to be the opponent's nest. After Li Enping started killing, many natives came. Among them, there were more than a dozen very powerful ones, about the strength of level 5 ability users, and some strange abilities. In particular, there was an old man who used the ability of fire. Li Enping had to deal with him with a second punch, and he was directly blasted into powder with the knife, and there was not even a trace of residue. So, at this moment, all the natives have become corpses and fragments under Li Enping's feet. He sat on the hill of corpses with a bored face, calculating the time. Li Enping silently calculated in his heart, it should be almost time, about 20 seconds left. As Li Enping counted the time in his heart, after 20 seconds, he felt that his body was surrounded by waves of power again, as if trying to pull his body out. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and the void force field had accumulated power around her body. The next moment, Li Enping's men disappeared completely, as if they had never appeared. Only hundreds of corpses were left, telling us that a catastrophe had once occurred here. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglango. Chapter 326. The moment Li Enping returned to Tianjing again, he did not try to attack Shang Zhenhai and the others. Instead, he sprinted downwards and directly broke through countless floors and came directly to the underground. At the same time, the incarnation of thought energy behind him flew back, broke through the glass, and went directly to the sky outside the building. The next moment, in Shang Zhenhai's sight, the whole world slowly stopped again. Whether it was the incarnation of mind energy or Li Anping who rushed into the ground, they all stopped again. Seeing Li Anping disappearing, Shang Jinhai's face looked a little ugly. However, he first grabbed the shoulders of Yulia and Barnes with his hands, waking up the two people who were frozen. Yulia frowned and asked first, "Where is Li Anping?" Shang Jinhai raised his chin, pointed at the big hole in the ground that was knocked out by Li Anping, and said, "Rush down there." As they spoke, the three level 5 ability users swept downstairs with their physical thoughts, and discovered that Li Anping had broken through 7 floors including the underground parking garage, almost as if he had dug a curved underground passage. Same, 50 meters deep underground. Shang Jinhai's ability requires very high response. Especially to deal with super speed warriors like Li Anping, he had specially trained his reactions. So it only took about 0.05 seconds from when Li Anping appeared to when Shang Jinhai reacted and activated his abilities. But in just 0.05 seconds, Li Anping rushed out a distance of hundreds of meters, especially 50 meters of which were dug out of the ground. Yulia urged, "He rushed so far? Let's go down quickly, otherwise it will be bad when the duration of your ability is up." Barnes nodded too. Pulling Shang Jinhai along, he wanted to go downstairs. But Shang Jinhai stopped them, his face a little solemn. "Can't go down." "Why?" Yulia shouted, "it's a waste of time waiting here. Once he drags you past the duration of your ability and lets him escape, we are all finished." But Shang Jinhai shook his head, "He is hiding underground. There is no light there. You can't see him and you can't aim at him." Yulia smiled and said, "It doesn't matter if there is no light, we just get a flashlight." Seeing Shang Jinhai looking at her strangely, Yulia frowned and said, "What? Is there something wrong with what I said?" Shang Jinhai sighed, "Our present is the future of the entire universe. All matter is the past for us. Everything we do can become the future after our abilities end, but we do not. The past cannot be changed." Yulia asked, "So? The same is true for light. We humans observe objects by feeling light, but even light itself has speed. Usually because the speed of light is too fast, we can't feel it, but now under the influence of my ability, the relative speed of light is 0 for us. We can see the light that has been generated, but we cannot feel the light that is about to be generated." Shang Jinhai explained, "That is to say, if there are other things moving in this space, we cannot see it. We can only see their past movements. If we go to a dark place now, we won't be able to see anything except darkness." Barnes said, "Then we can't shine it with a flashlight." I said this. In this universe now, except for us, everything is still, and so is light. Even if we dig up the entire ground and expose Li Anping to the sun, we still can't see him. All you can see is darkness. Shang Jinhai's abilities are divided into 2 parts. Those that can be used actively are called the unchangeable world, while those that can be used passively are called inviolable boundaries. In the universe we live in, time is never absolute. Even if the same creatures are in different positions and have different speeds, time will pass differently on them. Human beings observe the world with their eyes and ears, and can never even observe the creatures that are in the present at the same time as themselves. Because light has speed, sound also has speed. Whether it is an image seen or a sound heard, to the observer, it is the past of that thing. All humans can observe is always the past. It's just that the speed of light and sound is too fast for ordinary people to detect it. Shang Jinhai's unchangeable world is to regard himself as an observer of the entire universe. For him, everything in the entire world is just the past, but for him, for the entire universe, he belongs to the future. During the duration of his ability, everything he does cannot change the past, but it can weave the future. This is Shang Jinhai's own understanding of his abilities. When Yulia heard Shang Jinhai say that it was impossible to see Li Anping no matter what, her brows furrowed even more. "Then what should we do?" There is no way to see him. If I aim at him, my surefire bullet will not be able to hit him may be activated. Hearing Yulia's question, Shang Jinhai touched his chin and suddenly his eyes changed. How is it possible? What's wrong? Asked Barnes. Shang Jinhai suddenly said with a solemn face, Li Anping, you may already know my abilities. Yulia didn't believe it. How is this possible? You have only activated your abilities a few times in total. How could he understand what your abilities are so quickly? Then why did he run underground? Shang Jinhai narrowed his eyes. If it was simply to increase the distance, find cover, or to avoid your bullet, he had too many ways to use, but he chose to dig a road underground. Shang Jinhai said slowly, if he really realized that my ability is related to time and space, wait, I understand. A hint of understanding flashed across Shang Jinhai's face. He has doubts, but he is not completely sure of my ability. He is testing. He has fought with Yulia before and already understands your ability. If we didn't attack him underground, then he would understand that we can't aim at him in the dark. He would understand. The things that we suddenly appeared in front of him before, or suddenly disappeared in front of him, distorted time, not space. Thinking of this, Shang Jinhai sneered, but even if you know it, what's the matter, you follow me. Let's try another way. When Li Anping was exiled to the Barnes alien world for the second time, he had guessed Shang Jinhai's ability. The other party disappeared strangely and appeared suddenly. They appeared and disappeared like teleportation, but they dodged his ability just in time and attacked him. Especially during the second exile in another world, Li Anping stared at the three people, but the three people suddenly disappeared and appeared without any movement track. When they appeared, the woman named Yulia had completed the aiming and shooting. The first thing Li Anping thought of was an illusion. Either the opponent's speed was faster than his, or time was suspended. The illusion was ruled out at the first time. Then he also understood that the opponent's speed could not be faster than his. The key was that he did not see any trace of the opponent's movement at all. If the three opponents could really be so fast, then there was no need to fight him so secretly. The only phenomenon that best fits Li Anping's eyes is that time is suspended. But Li Anping immediately denied this possibility. The energy that can stop the time of the entire universe. It is enough for the opponent to kill Li Anping countless times, and there is no need to be so troublesome. As for regional time stopping, it is even more impossible. That is equivalent to temporarily stopping the molecular movement of all the surrounding matter, reaching the concept of absolute zero. After more than a dozen other possibilities were ruled out by Li Anping temporarily believed that the other party did not stop time. Instead, he distorted the time and space he was in, causing the relative time to change. So after he returned to Tianjing again, he immediately rushed underground and hid in the darkness. This was to test the extent to which the other party had distorted time and space. And his mind incarnation rushed out of the building. After seeing the position of the sun in the sky and the time on the building, he once again confirmed that the other party did not have the ability to stop the regional time. The rest was to confirm the extent to which the other party had distorted time and space. Time and space are originally one, and the mass of matter can distort time and space, just like a bowling ball stuck in the sofa. The time and space of the entire universe is originally curved under the distortion of countless planets. And based on the other party's performance, Li Anping guessed that Shang Jinhai should have distorted the time and space he was in, achieving an effect similar to time dilation. And what the effect of the distortion is what Li Anping wants to confirm next. First of all, for Shang Jinhai, light is still constant at the speed of light, or has become a static existence. This is related to what state Shang Jinhai is in the distorted space and time. This is also what Li Anping wants to confirm. Depending on the confirmation results, Li Anping can use different methods to deal with Shang Jinhai. So he rushed into the underground and waited for the opponent's reaction. The passage that Li Anping dug underground was a tunnel that first went vertically downward and then horizontally to the right. The moment Li Anping rushed into the underground, a huge light directly illuminated the entire horizontal underground passage. Li Anping turned around and found that Shang Jinhai was holding a huge searchlight to shine on him. Under the investigation of the incarnation of mind energy and mind energy, Yulia stood on the top of Shang Jinhai's head, on the hole that Li Anping had crashed into. One thought after another sounded in Li Anping's heart like lightning: have you used your ability? So light is also a static existence for you. His ability has been used, and now it should be cooling time. If the ability does not need to be cooled, then the previous things will not happen at all. Yulia is above the cave entrance. Is he trying to lure me over and then hit me again to exile me? Did he forget that I have a way to attack from a distance? As the thought flashed through his mind, Li Anping instinctively punched Shang Jinhai in the air. Shang Jinhai was completely unaware. His body could not sense the speed, but the thoughts in his mind were no less than Li Anping's. He will definitely attack me. When I came here and shone the light on him, he should have confirmed the assumption that I have a similar ability to stop time, regardless of whether he thought about the interval between the use of the ability. In order to prevent me from escaping, he will definitely attack me at the first time under instinctive reaction. As long as you attack me, you will lose, Li Anping. You will lose. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 327. But the moment Li Anping's right hand hit the shock wave, a series of clues flashed quickly in his mind. As far as Li Anping can see now, the opponent has used his ability 3 times in total. The first time Shang Jinhai used his ability was after Li Anping rushed towards them from the car and punched them. Moved from the roof to the inside of the building. The second time was the moment after Li Anping returned from the other world and attacked Shang Jinhai. The third time was just after Li Anping went underground. The speed difference between the second and third time was too big. The second time, I just threw a punch, and he was able to activate his ability the moment after the punch. And the third time, I went 50 meters underground, and he barely had time to activate his ability. And the first and second times, the ability was actually all activated when I attacked him. So, in a short moment, Li Anping had already thought about many things in his mind, and at this moment the white shockwave had just taken shape and was about to hit Shang Jinhai in front of him. At this moment, Li Anping took a step and rushed out directly, blocking the shockwave. With a loud bang, the shockwave hit Li Anping's back directly, leaving Shang Jinhai in front of him unscathed. The explosive airflow hit the wall of the underground passage directly, causing smoke and dirt to splash up and block everyone's sight. Yulia's heart tightened. The bullet had been fired, but she lost the figure of Shang Jinhai in her sight. The opponent's position was completely covered by layers of cocky smoke. She didn't know the result of her last pull of the trigger. Are you looking for Shang Jinhai? At this moment, Li Anping's voice came from behind her head. Yulia's chest was choked, and just as she was about to move, she felt a palm directly pinching her neck and lifting her whole body up. Originally, Yulia was at least a level 5 ability user. Even if she didn't use her ability, she was enough to crush most of the ability users below level 5 with her body and mind. Only using fists and feet, he is completely invincible among ordinary people. But now behind him is the man with the strongest body on this planet. Being grabbed by Li Anping like this, she felt that her neck seemed to be broken at any time and anywhere, and she could no longer breathe. From the appearance of Shang Jinhai to Li Anping's attack. But he stopped attacking and shifted his target to Yulia. It took less than a few tenths of a second. When Shang Jinhai reacted and swept away all the smoke and dust in front of him with his tyrannical mind, he could only look up and see Li Anping holding Yulia like a chicken standing at the entrance of the cave. And Yulia's face was flushed, and her legs kicked wildly. She was struggling constantly. But Li Anping not only pinched her neck with his hands, but also controlled her body with the void force field, so her struggle was meaningless. How is it possible? He saw through my ability? In a moment of less than a second, he could actually react? Thoughts were ups and downs in his heart, but Shang Jinhai's face remained calm. Looking at Li Anping, he said coldly, "Let her go." Li Anping looked at Shang Jinhai at his feet. A cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. With a snap, Yulia's neck tilted, and her legs, which had been struggling non-stop, instantly stopped and turned into unconscious swings. She was directly broken by Li Anping's neck. With a bang, the body fell directly from the hole and landed in front of Shang Jinhai. Li Anping said indifferently, "Your ability can still work passively, right?" Shang Jinhai's pupils shrank for a while. He didn't expect Li Anping to actually see it. His ability is divided into two parts. The one that can be used actively is called the unchangeable world, and the one that can be used passively is called the inviolable boundary. When Shang Jinhai's body reached the fifth energy level, a field that was enough to distort time and space was born inside his body. This field can use Shang Jinhai as an observer, making all the material things in the world become the past for him. So as long as there is a material attack on Shang Jinhai, it will be regarded as the past and try to catch up with the future, which is naturally impossible. Then Shang Jinhai's ability will be activated naturally, distorting time and space. This is the inviolable boundary. Looking at Shang Jinhai with an ugly face, Li Anping opened his palm towards him, and there was a deformed bullet in it. Yulia's target was not me from the beginning. In fact, when I was moving at high speed, he couldn't aim at me at all. Li Anping said calmly, "Her target was you. In order to attack you, you exceeded the interval time of your ability and activated your ability again." The deformed and twisted bullet fell from Li Anping's palm and fell to the ground with a crisp sound. He murmured, "But she didn't activate her ability to shoot you, so she gave me the opportunity to catch the bullet and prevent you from activating your ability. It seems that even your ability can't avoid his bullet that is sure to hit you." When he said this, there was a sudden rumble upstairs, and Li Anping laughed calmly. That was his mind incarnation killing Barnes. In this way, he killed 2 level 5 ability users in a row, and with the previous series of killings, his physical fitness, which had not improved for a long time, finally improved again. Strength increased from 37.8 to 37.9, speed increased from 38.2 to 38.3, and physical fitness increased from 38.7 to 38.8. They increased by 0.1 respectively. After all, his current body is too powerful. Every 0.1 increase will make him much stronger, and he needs more and stronger souls. Just after the incarnation of mind energy killed Barnes, Li Anping pressed one of his palms directly on the ground under his feet. The void force field directly covered the ground, completely covering the hole in front of him. Then, Li Anping looked at Shang Jinhai coldly and punched his head. The white energy was like a terrifying white dragon, rushing directly from the basement of the building to the sky. Wherever it passed, all cement, stone slabs, furniture, and floors were torn into countless pieces. There was a series of explosions and groans inside the building. If you look from the outside, you can see a white dragon rushing directly from the bottom of the building to the top of the building, and then flying into the distant sky. Then the whole building began to deform and twist at a speed visible to the naked eye. The wall began to break into pieces, and the entire roof shattered into countless stones, falling to the ground. Amid the earth-shattering explosion, the entire building began to collapse from the first floor, turning into countless fragments that submerged the position where Li Anping was. In Shang Jinhai's sight, he could see countless cement and broken bodies falling down, but they all stopped at the entrance of the cave. The hole above his head was like covered by a layer of invisible glass. No matter how many things fell down, none of them could enter the cave. At this moment, Shang Jinhai had a flash of enlightenment in his mind. So that's it? He had already determined my ability at the beginning, which should be related to time. Entering the underground space is not only to further confirm my ability, but also a trap. Thinking of this, Shang Jinhai took a few steps back and retreated from the vertical passage into the horizontal underground passage. Sure enough, when the whole building collapsed, Li Anping directly removed the void force field at the entrance of the cave, allowing countless building debris to fall into the vertical passage. Seal this underground passage. Shang Jinhai looked at the completely blocked exit, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. If it was an ordinary basement, he could rush out directly with his mind. But now he is in an underground cave of 50 meters, and the only passage is blocked by millions of tons of steel and concrete. But Shang Jinhai now has more than one ability. He also has the 5th energy level power brought by the spirit gem. The powerful mental power swept in all directions. When he saw Barnes's body, the cold light in Shang Jinhai's eyes deepened. He directly said calmly to his companions in the distance through the mental connection. Li Anping is out of trouble. He may go there at any time, so hurry up. White Dwarf, help me build an underground passage. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 328. In the ruins, with a crashing sound, Li Anping directly broke through a large piece of debris and rushed out from underground. His eyes looked at the position where Shang Jinhai was, as if he could see through the layers of void and see the other person's appearance. This should be able to trap him temporarily, but it cannot kill him completely. At the same time, more and more sounds came to Li Anping's ears, which were various explosions, roars, and the sounds of the entire Tianjing fighting. There is no time to continue to entangle with Shang Jinhai, and give priority to eliminating other invaders. When Li Anping rushed out of the ruins, the paladins who were originally guarding near the building had slowly surrounded him. Their previous mission was to guard near the building to prevent anyone from approaching the building and hinder Shang Jinhai and the other two from trapping Li Anping. When Li Anping knocked the building down with a punch, they fled in all directions, but no one was injured. Now that Li Anping appeared again, they slowly surrounded him. For other people with special abilities in this battle, Li Anping might be a very scary monster, a demon that they don't want to face for even a second. But for these fanatics of the Knights Templar, death is nothing to fear. Even if Li Anping is 10 or 100 times stronger, he can't make their rigid brains feel fear. So when they confirmed that the other party was Li Anping, under one command, thousands of knights wearing power armor and holding chainsaw swords rushed towards Li Anping in the center of the ruins. Roar! Kill this demon! We are the sword of the Lord. Facing hundreds of Knights Templar, all with distorted faces and red eyes, rushing over like murderers. Li Anping's eyes flashed with disgust. He pouted and spit directly at the crowd. With a loud bang, the saliva from Li Anping's mouth hit a knight's chest directly. The knight was like being hit by a big hammer in mid-air. Starting from the chest, the entire power armor was smashed into pieces with a bang. And he was pushed away by this huge force, and he killed more than 10 knights in a row before falling to the ground like a broken toy. But seeing this scene, the remaining knights did not fear at all, but rushed towards Li Anping more frantically, with ferocious expressions on their faces as if Li Anping was their mortal enemy. With a swish, the black incarnation of mind energy appeared directly behind Li Anping. Looking at the fanatics rushing towards him, Li Anping was too lazy to pay attention and said directly, "Kill them all." At the same time as he finished the sentence, he had already soared into the sky and disappeared. The incarnation of mind energy raised his head and looked at the knights present with a bloodthirsty look. The next moment, before all the knights could react, a black line had passed through hundreds of knights. It was like a bolt of lightning struck them and connected them. But that was a far more terrifying attack than lightning. It was the impact of the incarnation of mind energy. It was just because the speed of the incarnation of mind energy was too fast, so in their eyes they could only see a black line passing through one knight after another. Every knight passed by the black line exploded in an instant, just like a bomb, splashing into countless fragments with a bang. In just a few seconds, thousands of knights had been killed. This is the highest level armed force of the code. When faced with a more overwhelming force, it seemed powerless to resist. It couldn't even figure out what killed itself. Accompanied by various roars and screams, the whole street was dyed red with blood at this moment, and the blood flowed in all directions like an endless stream. When Li Anping was temporarily trapped by Shang Jinhai and his party, Jing Guang and Yan Bei were also in a deadly battle. Jing Guang's opponent is Alexander, one of the vice leaders of the Knights Templar, who is known as the Light of God. He is also one of the 5th level ability users of the Codex Kingdom. Alexander's ability is very simple, that is, he can emit light from any part of his body. When every inch of his skin on his body emits light at the same time, the intensity of the light is about the same as that of a stage searchlight. But when he reduces the parts that emit light little by little, the light begins to focus, and the intensity of the light begins to increase. When the light starts to be emitted only from his fingertips, the light, like a high-temperature laser, is enough to burn gold and boil iron. His ability looks simple, but it is powerful because of its simplicity. Whether it is the unparalleled speed of light or the flexibility of being able to emit from any part of the body, Jing Guang, who is fighting with him, is in an absolute dilemma. It is seen that Jing Guang, who has completed the transformation, is burning with golden flames all over his body, and is attacking around Alexander at a speed that is difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. But although his speed is far faster than the opponent, no matter how fast he is, it is not faster than the speed of light. Although Jing Guang was able to avoid some attacks in advance by virtue of his faster body speed and reaction speed, he still had difficulty dodging most attacks. He rushed towards Alexander while raising his hand and throwing a car-sized energy bullet at him. However, the energy bullet had just flown a few meters before it was hit by 3 or 4 consecutive rays of light, exploding and disappearing in midair. Then, more than a dozen rays of light shot towards the high-speed moving golden light. Although he tried his best to dodge some of them, most of them still hit his body directly. With the endless energy of mind, although the golden light blocked this wave of light, it still left a charred patch on his skin. Facing the attack of the golden light jumping up and down, Alexander on the opposite side did not move at all. He just raised his finger to make the opponent run for his life. Weak. Too weak. Is this the power that you pagans dare to act recklessly? You are really a frog in the well. Along with Alexander's last words, the frequency of the light emitted from his body instantly increased. Jing Guang's shoulder was penetrated by a high-energy light and screamed. Crashed into a residential house. On the other side, Yan Bei's situation seemed to be even worse. Unlike Jing Guang, he was the one standing still. I saw Walford walking calmly beside him. Every time he drew his sword, he would bring a wound on Yan Bei's body. On the other hand, every time Yan Bei launched a collapse attack, Walford would dodge it in advance. In just 10 minutes after Li Anping left, Yan Bei's feet had turned into a pool of blood. His face was pale. He felt dizzy and felt that he would fall down at any moment. Seeing his weak appearance, Walford laughed. "Why don't you surrender? Your ability is very potential. Why don't you join the Knights Templar? If you can reach the 5th energy level, you are definitely capable of becoming a deputy leader." Shut up! Yan Bei raised his hand and directly generated 2 collapse spaces on the left and right sides of the opponent. But Walford didn't move at all. If he had dodged just now, he would have hit the collapse force field directly, but he saw Yan Bei's attack gesture, but he didn't move at all, as if he had predicted it in advance. Tisk, 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 so stubborn. Are all the people of Daxia so stupid? Walford said casually. That Tang Vihan is the same. He refused to give up even if he died. What did you say? A cold light flashed in Yan Bei's eyes, as if he was staring at Walford. Oh, he is also a member of your Daxialanke, but he sneaked into our nights. Do you know him? Walford laughed and said, his scream before his death. But it makes me remember it endlessly. Yanbei roared, although he knew that the other party was provoking him. But he couldn't help but get angry. The remaining mind energy burned violently, and the collapsed space began to generate with the self as the center. Within a radius of 100 meters, all matter was ready to move under this terrible gravity. Walford's face changed. He didn't expect the other party to be so cruel that he wanted to die together, and he didn't expect the other party's collapse ability to cover such a large range. What he didn't know was that this was the effect that the collapse ability could only achieve after Yanbei used his body as the center. Everything within 100 meters would be reduced to dust, including Yanbei himself. Just as the collapse force field was about to be fully activated, a hand pressed on Yanbei's shoulder. Okay, put it away. Yanbei paused, slowly turned his head and looked behind him. Your Majesty. Li Anping patted his shoulder and said lightly, you did a good job, leave the rest to me. Yanbei's face showed a relaxed expression, and the next moment he closed his eyes and fainted. The huge collapse force field also disappeared again in the next moment. Li Anping hugged the unconscious Yanbei, put him on the ground, and then took out the hemostatic spray in the opponent's combat uniform and began to give Yanbei a simple treatment. Walford slowly retreated while carefully observing Li Anping in front of him. It doesn't matter, even if he attacks me, I can see it in advance. Though thinking so, Walford couldn't help but retreat faster and faster, approaching Alexander. Until Li Anping stood up and set his sights on him. At this moment, it seemed as if the sickle of the god of death was on his neck. Walford's body began to tremble, and despair kept flowing out of his eyes. Yes, he saw it, but it was because he saw it that he felt more desperate. He couldn't even resist one move of the opponent's attack. Death was about to come in the next second. What was despairing was that he could see it, but he couldn't stop it. Li Anping's eyes were like icebergs on the Arctic Sea. He said without any emotion, I'm very busy now, so I won't listen to your last words. Please go to death directly. When this sentence reached Walford's ears, Li Anping had already taken a step forward and appeared directly behind Walford's body. Li Anping held Walford's head in his hand, gently pinched it, and with a crisp sound, he had already crushed the opponent's head like a watermelon. Walford's headless body shook, and then fell down with a bang in the next second. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 329. Alexander looked at the place where Jingguang was hiding and smiled disdainfully. Death struggle. The spirit energy swept directly across the residential area, and he pointed his finger at the location of Jingguang. Goodbye, little frog. The next moment, his fingertips shot out a laser, and then directly passed through the wall of the residential area, shot through Jingguang's chest, and killed him completely, just like the countless lambs he had killed in the past. But just when he was about to use his ability, his index finger hurt slightly, and the expected light did not appear at all. He subconsciously looked down at his index finger and saw that the first knuckle of the entire index finger had been completely broken, and slowly fell to the ground under the action of gravity. It was not until then that his eyes could slowly see Li Anping's figure appear in front of him, looking at him coldly, as if he was looking at a pig or sheep about to be slaughtered. This was the look that Alexander hated to see the most. In this world, he was the only one who could look at others like this. Two beams of light, only millimeters in size, shot out directly from Alexander's pupils and instantly hit Li Anping's forehead. Wherever they passed, a puff of green smoke was heard in the air. Alexander was confident that people without abilities could block this level of light with their bodies. I heard that he also has the ability to regenerate super fast, so I will just roast his entire brain. But something terrifying happened to Alexander. No matter how he increased the output of his eye rays, the other party's body was unharmed, as if he was not shining high energy light, but a flashlight. He subconsciously took a step back and looked at Li Anping with an expression like he was looking at a ghost. You. Unfortunately, he hadn't finished his words. Li Anping had already slapped him on the head. Accompanied by a series of crackling explosions, Alexander's entire head was directly slapped into the chest by a huge force. His entire chest bulged high, and several ribs pierced directly. Just one encounter, he was dead and couldn't die anymore. After slapping Alexander to death, Li Anping looked back at Jing Guang's position and said, "Take care of Yan Bei, and then go to the support base." Jing Guang stood up, holding his shoulder, and nodded to Li Anping. Then he ran towards Yan Bei. On the other side of the street, applause rang out. Hades looked at Li Anping with hatred on his face, applauding and praising, "You are worthy of being the one who defeated me before. You are more than 10 times stronger now than before." Li Anping looked at Hades in confusion. "Have you been cloned?" "Don't compare me with those clones," Hades snorted and said, "I crawled out of hell this time to seek revenge on you." Li Anping, you should have heard it. The wailing of the city. Not only you, but your men, your friends, and everyone related to you will die. We will completely destroy you and your traces in the whole world. Seeing Hades' hysterical look, Li Anping didn't say anything. He rushed towards Hades directly. A punch hit the opponent's chest. However, this punch did not cause any effect except for a hurricane at the location of Hades, blowing away more than a dozen cars. Li Anping's fist was like hitting another world, and it directly sank into Hades' body. Not only Li Anping's fist, but also his entire body. All of them rushed into Hades' body as if rushing into a portal. Li Anping felt that his eyes were blurred. He had already appeared in another world. The gray sky, the bloody moon, and the barren land under his feet. In front of Li Anping, the appearance of the underworld appeared again. Is it really Hades' underworld? Li Anping thought in his heart. His punch just now was both a test and an attack. If the opponent is a fake, then he will be killed with one punch. If it is really Hades, then the external attack is invalid, and he must enter the underworld to kill his body. Thinking of what Hades just said, Li Anping thought of a rumor. It is said that Paladin, the leader of the Knights Templar, has the ability of the Netherworld, which is considered to be the most powerful external ability. He has the power to resurrect the dead. Is this true? When this thought came to his mind, even Li Anping couldn't help but have some ripples in his mind. The ability to resurrect the dead is indeed very tempting. However, he knew that this was not the time to think about these things. He looked directly at the blood moon in the sky. With a slight force on his feet, the whole person had already soared into the sky like a rocket. Looking at the place where he was standing, it was like an earthquake. The ground of hundreds of meters around him burst and sank at the same time, turning into a huge pit. And driven by this huge reaction force, Li Anping flew towards the blood moon in the sky at an astonishing speed. Looking at the blood moon close at hand, Li Anping shouted, and the fist of his right hand smashed towards the blood moon with the power of a mountain and a sea. Before the fist got close, a terrifying hissing sound was heard in the sky, and the air around Li Anping was instantly expelled and drained away. The first thing that hit the blood moon was the shock wave formed by the white airflow pushed by the fist. The terrifying airflow directly hit the blood moon, and the surface of the blood moon was like being hit by a meteor. The rock layer on the surface suddenly collapsed downwards, and countless rocks and fragments flew out. The entire blood moon trembled violently, as if it would be torn into pieces in the next moment. And this was just the aftermath of the attack. When Li Anping's fist really hit the surface of the blood moon, the whole space was filled with a crisp sound, as if something was torn apart. The next moment, with Li Anping's fist as the center, Cracks like dancing silver snakes spread wildly in all directions. Then a series of explosions sounded in the sky, and the blood moon was directly blasted into countless fragments by this punch and flew in all directions. It felt like a star explosion, and as the blood moon disappeared, it seemed that even the entire sky darkened. Last time, Li Anping smashed Hades' blood moon with 3 punches. But this time, he didn't even use his full strength. With just 1 punch, he blew up the entire blood moon. It can be seen how much his strength has increased. But as the blood moon was blown up by 1 punch, Li Anping frowned. Because just as the fragments of the blood moon were scattered, another blood-colored moon appeared in the original position, as if what Li Anping had just smashed was just an illusion. Hades' laughter came from the inside of the blood moon, as if he was laughing at Li Anping's overestimation of his own abilities. "Fool, do you think I will be defeated by you twice in the same place? I crawled out of hell, and I am the real non-body. As long as the duration of the Yellow Spring Kingdom has not expired, no attack can kill me. And you will be trapped here forever, watching your subordinates die one by one. In the end, when I die again, the entire underworld will be annihilated, and you, Li Anping, you will die with the underworld and perish with me." Seeing Li Anping frowning, Hades laughed excitedly. "How is it, this feeling of quietly waiting for death?" Li Anping ignored him. He was communicating with the incarnation of mind energy in the outside world, hoping to find the caster, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Paladin, by manipulating the incarnation of mind energy. But at this moment, a man in a white robe with platinum hair appeared on the blood moon. There was no emotion in his eyes, just as cold as a robot. "No, it's not a robot, but the King of Gods who is high above. No matter what, in his eyes, there is no difference. That is not cold and ruthless, but pure equality." "Hello, Li Anping." The man looked at Li Anping and said lightly, "My name is Paladin, the leader of the Knights Templar." At the moment when the other party reported his name, Li Anping's mind had already reacted quickly. The land of the underworld can guarantee that the Hades will not die. And in the underworld, Paladin will not really die no matter how many times he is killed. Between the two, it constitutes a cycle of death. Li Anping exhaled, "Trouble. Man at the top of the food chain." Author, Xianglang. Chapter 330. Seeing that Li Anping ignored him and Paladin didn't care, he just continued, "Li Anping, if you are willing to join the Knights Templar and become a loyal servant of the Lord, then I can let you go now." When Paladin said this, his expression was still expressionless and cold, as if there was nothing in this world that could attract his attention except the Lord. Li Anping heard Paladin's words and sneered, "Oh? You want me to join the cult of truth? I just killed all the people in your Templar order. Aren't you afraid that I will regret it immediately after I leave? No problem, if they die for the Lord, they will ascend to the 72nd level of heaven and enjoy the supreme glory. If you are willing to join us, you will naturally have to accept the countermeasures we planned and temporarily let us control your body." Paladin Gujing said calmly, "As long as you are willing to join the knights and spread the glory of the Lord, you can atone for your previous mistakes." "Atonement?" Li Anping snorted coldly, "Okay, there is no problem if you want me to join the truth religion, but I must lead the entire truth religion." Arrogant this time, Paladin was no longer expressionless, but a flash of anger flashed in his eyes, and there was a slight chill in his tone. "Li Anping, you probably haven't understood yet? My land of hell, the dead can be resurrected for 3 days. During these 3 days, the resurrected person cannot be killed again. So Pluto now has an immortal body. And I, who is in the underworld, am protected by the underworld. Also immortal. No matter how many times you kill us, you will never leave Hades. And 1 day later, my land of underworld will end, and the underworld will disappear entirely. You, who cannot return to the real world, will also disappear with him." Li Anping said, "So, You don't plan to get out alive. Paladin closed his eyes and said with a compassionate temperament, for the glory of the Lord and the safety of the entire world. Even if it means sacrificing the entire knights, I will not hesitate. Li Anping said disdainfully, I don't know. Do you think the world would be better without me? I don't know. Paladin shook his head, but you are too aggressive and your strength is growing too fast. If we don't stop you, sooner or later there will be a battle between you and the Western continent. By then, all living beings will be in ruins. It's the end of the world. That kind of thing will never happen. Because once I take action, I will never give the Western continent any chance to resist. Li Anping said confidently, the whole world will be unified by then, and I will lead all mankind into the utopia. There will be no crime, no hunger, no poverty, no hatred in the entire society. The entire human society will enter an unprecedented prosperous era. This is my will. It will also be the will of the entire world, and no one can stop it. Looking at Li Anping's firm gaze, Paladin sighed, since you have such ambitions, I can't let you out. Your ambition will only bring death and terror to the entire world. Finish this sentence. Paladin remained silent, apparently no longer intending to persuade Li Anping. Instead, he decided to completely trap the other party. Li Anping's heart moved, and he finally contacted the incarnation of Nian Qi. It seems that although this place no longer belongs to the space where the real world is located, it is not like when it was exiled before, because the distance is too far to contact the incarnation of the mind energy. It took him a while, but he still felt the presence of the incarnation of his mind energy. At this time, the incarnation of Nian Qi was standing on the ruins of the building. Under his feet, the corpses of thousands of knights were covered. Because he lost contact with Li Anping, the previous incarnation of Nian Qi was lowering his head and motionless. Now that the two were connected again, the incarnation of Nian Qi suddenly raised its head. I saw a shadow flashing in front of Li Anping, and the incarnation of his mind energy had broken through many obstacles and arrived in the underworld. Seeing this thing suddenly appearing in front of Li Anping, both Paladin and Hades became curious. This is an ability that has not been shown in Li Anping's information. However, they were just curious and did not think that Li Anping had the ability to kill them or break the underworld. Li Anping on the other side no longer paid attention to Blood Moon and Paladin. Because due to the interaction of abilities, he indeed cannot kill Paladin and Hades. But that doesn't mean he gives up. Under Li Anping's control, the entire incarnation of thought energy began to slowly deform, shrink, and flow toward Li Anping's palm. This was originally a trick I came up with when I was thinking about how to kill Shang Jinhai. However, the power and side effects are too great, and it is obviously not suitable to be used directly in Tianjing. On the other hand, if it's Hades, there won't be any problem. Under the confused gazes of Pluto and Paladin, the incarnation of thought energy quickly gathered into a black sphere and curled up in Li Anping's palm. At the beginning, the black sphere in Li Anping's palm was about the size of a basketball, and Pluto and Paladin could even see streams of black thought energy rolling in it. But then the incarnation of thought energy began to actively shrink its body, making the entire black sphere become smaller and smaller. From the size of a basketball, it became the size of a tennis ball, then the size of a ping-pong ball, and then the incarnation of the mind began to compress itself with the void force field. Under the extremely high pressure, he shrank again, from a diameter of 1 mm to a diameter of 1 micrometer, then 1 nanometer. Until the end, Pluto and Paladin could no longer see the existence of the black sphere, and even Li Anping himself could not see the black sphere. It was already a size that was difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. Li Anping could only rely on the connection between himself and the incarnation of the mind to feel the other party's position. It was at this time that Paladin's hair stood up all over his body. Even though he knew that he was immortal, there was still an unprecedented sense of danger coming from Li Anping's right palm. What on earth does he want to do? At the same time, The air around him began to flow, and the direction of the flow was the black sphere in the palm of Li Anping's hand. It was like a door to another world in a certain position, constantly swallowing and spitting out the surrounding gas. Then, Li Anping raised his hands, held the black sphere above his head, and converted his own void force field into suction. Li Anping's own void force field continued to generate suction towards the center of his hands, that is, the direction of the black sphere. The incarnation of mind energy used the void force field wrapped around itself to form an inward pressure. At this time, more air rushed towards the black sphere, which was like a singularity that could never be filled, constantly absorbing everything in the air. Paladin looked at the surrounding air rushing towards Li Anping with a little tension in his heart, and an absurd idea emerged in his mind. Just as he was laughing at his absurd idea, he saw Li Anping slowly falling towards the ground of the underworld. At this moment, Li Anping's hands were like holding an invisible eye of the typhoon. As he got closer and closer to the ground below seemed to become irritable. The mud and sand on the surface began to fly uncontrollably towards the sky, in the direction of the black sphere. As Li Anping gradually fell to the ground, the situation became more and more serious. At first, it was just mud and sand, followed by pebbles, stones, and then large pieces of soil and rock layers. They were directly sucked into the black sphere, and under the strong pressure, they turned into a point that was difficult to distinguish with the naked eye, as if they were swallowed alive. Is this a black hole? How is it possible? An incredible thought sounded in Paladin's mind, but he denied it in an instant. Impossible. How could Li Anping create a black hole by himself? Pluto in the blood moon also reacted and analyzed calmly. It does look a bit like a black hole, but it is just a simulated black hole. It should be the inspiration Li Anping got from the black hole. Maybe it can create a satellite, but what can it do? Just as the two were talking, as more and more things were swallowed, the suction of the black sphere seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. In a blink of an eye, Li Anping's feet had turned into a large hole with a diameter of hundreds of meters and a depth of tens of meters. The missing parts had all been swallowed by the black sphere. But even with so many things absorbed, the black sphere was still too big to be seen by the naked eye. It was just that the attraction from it was increasing at a speed that was difficult for ordinary people to detect as its mass increased. The big hole under Li Anping's feet was getting bigger and bigger as more and more soil and rocks were sucked away.